Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a really cool idea about how language actually works. It's a way of thinking that gets right to the heart of how we make sense of our world, one sentence at a time.
All right, so to really get our heads around this, let's start with a little puzzle. I'm going to show you a phrase that all by itself is incredibly vague.
By itself? This phrase is, well, it's pretty much useless, right? Because everything depends on the context. Without knowing the situation, these three little words are just floating out there in space.
Okay, so picture this. You're looking at a teenager's bedroom. You know the scene. Clothes everywhere, old pizza boxes. You say, it's a mess. It's a complaint, right? The meaning is super clear, super direct.
But now, let's take those exact same words and drop them into a completely different scene. You're in a boardroom. A huge project has just gone completely off the rails. Someone sighs and says, "It's a mess." Whoa. Suddenly, that's not about pizza boxes. It's about a massive failure. Teamwork, money, strategy, the whole shebang. See? Same words, totally different worlds of meaning. And this fundamental idea, that context is everything, is the exact problem that a really powerful theory called situational semantics was built to solve. It argues that meaning isn't just hiding in the words themselves. It's in the situation the words are pointing to.
Okay, so how do we actually make sense of this formally? How do you build a system, a logic, that can handle how flexible and frankly weird our language can be?
And this is where we see a huge jump from the old way of thinking, traditional logic, what's called Fregean logic, basically treated sentences like a light switch. They were either true or false. That's it. But situational semantics, it comes along and says, hold on, it's way more interesting than that. It says a sentence doesn't just have a simple true or false value. It actually refers to something. It points to a situation. And a situation is just a collection of all the basic facts of that moment. You can almost think of it like a single frame in a movie. You've got the people, the objects, the actions, all of it coming together to create that one specific context.
Now, I know this might sound super academic and abstract, but trust me, it has some massive real-world implications, especially when we start trying to get machines to understand us.
And this is exactly why this whole framework is such a game changer for AI. It gives a computer a rulebook for understanding nuance. I mean, it can finally handle the super long, complicated sentences because it sees them all as describing one big situation. It gets the whole when part of an event, and it understands how a tiny detail can change the meaning of the entire scene. It can even start to figure out cause and effect. It's a huge deal. But this isn't just about teaching robots to talk. The framework is so solid, it can actually help us solve some of the most famous, brain-bending puzzles that have kept logicians up at night for centuries. All right, let's put it to the test. You've probably heard of the liar's paradox. This sentence is false, right? If it's true, well, then it has to be false. But if it's false, then that means it's true. It just goes around and around in a circle, a total logical nightmare. So, how does situational semantics get us out of this mess? It's actually pretty clever. It says, look, we have to separate the statement from the context. The sentence itself, the proposition, exists inside one situation. Let's call it situation A. It's also trying to describe that very same situation. And here's the killer rule. A statement can't be a fact inside the very situation it's trying to describe. Therefore, the sentence just fails. It's not true in that specific context. And just like that, the loop is broken. What we can do is step outside of situation A into a bigger context, situation B. And from that new vantage point, we can make a perfectly logical statement. Hey, that proposition back in situation A, it wasn't true. No paradox. Problem solved. And this is not a one-trick pony. This same kind of thinking gets used all over the place. It's used to build a logic for how we ask questions. It's been used to map out the strategy for games like Guess Who. It even helps us think about what it means to know something, to be aware of something, and how our actions literally create new situations. So, okay, this is obviously a really powerful way to think about language and logic. But, with any big idea, you gotta ask, where does it break down? What are its limits?
And that's where things get really interesting. The big, hairy philosophical debate kicks off when we try to take this idea and apply it to a world that feels totally different, the world of mathematics.
So think about it. If we say that a math statement, like 2 + 2 = 4, only gets its meaning from the specific mathematical system, the situation it's in, what does that do to the idea that 2 plus 2 equals 4 is just true? Everywhere? Always? Some philosophers get really worried about this. They argue that if you make everything about context, you might be accidentally throwing out the idea of hard, objective mathematical facts that are true no matter what. And that leaves us with a really big, fascinating question to chew on. Situational semantics is this incredible tool for understanding how meaning gets created in our messy, complicated human world. But it also backs us into a corner and makes us ask something profound. If all meaning depends on the situation, can anything ever be universally absolutely true?